thank you guys for joining us for our live Growth Lab today. And I have with us government contracts expert attorney, Miss Trinette Chandler. So she has, and what we were just talking about is her very, very impressive resume that she, or bio that she sent over to me. So she is a procurement, compliance, GovCon, governance expert, educated at Carnegie Mellon, got her law degree from American University, her master's in law from GW that she's repping on her shirt today.
Hey.
So GW Law, right? So thank you so much for joining us. And you have such a wealth of knowledge and experience. I can say very, very impressive. So we appreciate you joining us today. She is barred, a member of the DC Bar Association, the National Bar Association, the Association of Proposal Management Professionals, which I'm also a member. So NCMA, which I'm also a member. So we have some things in common, so which I love, right? So I definitely appreciate you coming today. So today we're going to have like a candid conversation about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? As it relates to government contracting. So I've been in government contracting for a while, and I've seen some stuff. But they know all that. Like they've heard my stuff. So we want to know, right, what you've seen. And you definitely, I was a former federal contracting officer, with the Navy, the Marine Corps. I did some stuff with the Army, and I've seen things on the contracting awarding end, but you've experienced it from the legal perspective with protests and making sure that contractors were compliant and other things of that nature. So go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you so much again, Dr. Olin, for having me on. I just feel like we are sort of sister spirits, just talking to you about your background and us being in some of these different organizations. So I'm glad to be here. My whole goal is to share what I've been doing for 27 years in procurement for people to understand how it looks, how you move in this world, especially as small businesses, right? It's a very different animal. And so my background comes from, working these large opportunities and leading these large opportunities in different forms, at the large system integrators. Usually those opportunities are $500 million into single award, multiple billions of dollars. You're playing with the heavy hitters in that. And then also my passion is really working with small businesses to say, hey, here's how you do this, right? Because if you're at a Northrop Grumman or a Booz Allen, you're going to have this sort of cadre of people around you who are going to help you learn this, right? And you're going to have someone like me, they're going to have someone like you. But then the smaller firms don't really know that. And as a daughter of two retired, service disabled Army vets, I just feel like my passion is working with those firms, small minority firms, women-owned firms, et cetera, so that we all win together. That's my whole point. So, part of what I do is come in when you have those must-win, bet the company deals at companies that I know around the Beltway, the Booz Allens, the CSCs, the HPs, the Northrop Grummans. Those are all areas where I've served. I primarily work in Department of Defense, national security, aerospace, and healthcare sector opportunities. So I apologize for being so casual. I literally was like running like a maniac to get here. I was called into a secure space at the crack of dawn this morning, and I had to be there unexpectedly. So
yeah, well, that's okay. We're casual, right? Because this is like a laid back conversation that they get to kind of be privy to. So, and it's funny that you say about small businesses. It's almost like when people, some people I don't think intend to work with small businesses, but we kind of find ourselves in this space. It's almost like see a need, fill a need, and especially as it relates to small minority-owned businesses, because it just seems like for whatever reason, the playing field, while it's the same, we see it, a little bit differently, and we don't
Yes.
have, the resources. So it's like showing up to a football game and you ain't got shoulder pads, or you don't
Right.
have you don't have the helmet, right? You're not going to really be able to play. And that's how it kind of seems. So definitely thank you for 27 years. Well, that is a wealth of experience. Girl, you look 12.
Yes.
No, you look
I tell you all the time.
right.
I mean, I'm here. Well, I will receive that. I will receive that, Dr. Owen. Thank you, ma'am. I said I'm out here in these procurement streets, and I tell you, as we talked about, working in procurement, a lot of times, what I say, especially the proposal end, it's very arduous. It's very intense. And it can sort of age you in dog years, right? It can sort of age you in dog years, as I tell people.
Listen,
but what I'm saying,
yes.
it's a lot, right? And I've been in those environments where you're working around the clock, like you're trying to maybe beat out Lockheed on this opportunity, right? So it's all systems go. You have a war room, you have 40 people in there, you're running it, and you are like, okay, what do we need to do to take this away from this incumbent? How do we have to think about positioning ourselves and differentiating who we are so that we don't look like the other 20 guys coming to this party?
Right.
We need to be strategic in that. And so sometimes, when you're getting close to the end, you may work literally straight. I've taken in, a military backpack and, a sleeping bag to whatever, and, a duffel bag to change in the gym and all of that, when you're just trying to grind it, because when there's money on the line, whether it's $1 or whether it's $6 billion single award, I've done them all and I've won them all. I've won them at different level. I haven't won every single thing I've done, but I've won. My average is about, it's in the early 90s, 90, 91% win percentage. But my point is that you have to grind it, right? As you know, so.
But you mentioned something. You said, and you just kind of like, without realizing, I think you gave us insight into how the big boys do things.
Yes.
You mentioned the war room, and for us who have been in the military, we all know what the war room looks like. And then we all have passed it, and you're not really privy to go in there. But you talked about how you get in there and they're strategizing, and you're talking about how they are differentiating themselves.
Yes, ma'am.
And some of the popular misconceptions, and this is what I wanted to, ask you the question about. What are some of those that you think that small businesses have? Because we show up and there's I think sometimes, and I'm speaking from what I've seen as a federal contracting officer, getting proposals where they clearly did not understand the requirement, or they didn't take the time to really articulate their value proposition in a proposal. And so, you're talking about they're looking at how to differentiate themselves. So even the big boys, the Booz Allens, Deloitte's, they have to, how do they separate themselves from each other? Because when you are providing a service, right, there's really nothing new in how we're doing it, but what we're doing, but it's how we're doing it. And that's the value that we bring to the table. And I don't think small businesses realize the work that they have to put in. And some of them really, like, they go up against these companies, like, especially on full and open competition. And I always like to talk about, who is your true competition, but small businesses, and I've talked to them, they will list the Booz Allens and the Deloittes as their competitors. So like, what are some of the things that you think, from working with small businesses, some of those popular misconceptions that they have as it relates to government contracting?
Absolutely. Can we be honest here? Can we just kind of, be real here and have a good, as we call it, a
family
good
conversation? Yeah.
Okay. A good kiki amongst friends. Okay. Well, let me be very clear with you guys and give you some unvarnished truth, but I want you to take this out of love and to win. Nobody cares about your story unless your story is going to make a government contracts officer get the job done. So if you come and you write a proposal, let's just unpack a couple of things that you provided. And I tell this at the largest as well, if you write a proposal that's 7 years ago, we were from nobody cares. We want to understand in industry how to solve a need for the government. See, one of the things that I always tell people is the government, they're people too. They have jobs, they have careers, they have kids, in braces, they have a mortgage. They don't want to be that weirdo who approves or, moves this whole proposal through the process and it doesn't answer the mail. And what I mean, guys, is when I say answer the mail, It's like, do you go through each of the requirements and say, okay, they said they wanted a red car. How are we going to provide a red car? So you first go through and you do the first 3 C's. You are compliant. Are you giving them a compliant proposal that answers the mail? And what that requires is for you to sit and really unpack the requirements and sit and read that solicitation end to end. Because sometimes what looks really good when you look at it and it comes out and you're like, hey, we've been tracking this and it's an opportunity. Once you start digging into it, you're like, whoa, they need someone with a facilities clearance. We don't have that, and we're not in a position to team with someone who does. Maybe this isn't our opportunity, or maybe they need people with TSSCI clearances, or maybe they need someone who I worked a deal where they needed someone with a doctor of veterinary medicine to do work at, a military base on animal research. Mm-hmm. We don't have access to those people, so this isn't our deal. It looked good, but it's not our deal. So first, what you want to do is take a moment and just, I print, sorry, but I still print my solicitations off, but whatever, read through it and say, is this really for us? And if it does look like it's for us, are we able to put something together that will answer what I call the so what question? So you submitted your bid and mm-hmm. what, right? So that's the first pass is, are you compliant? Go through and answer the mail, right? Just go through and check just on your initial read. Then what I say is huddle up your team and say, hey, does this look like something we can really compete for? The next thing is, are you compelling? Are you telling me something that gets me jazzed? We all, I'm sure, probably grew up and you could order stuff out of like the JCPenney's catalog, right? You can just order mm-hmm. and get stuff like 84 years later, right? Stuff like that. Grew up doing that, right? But then there was a company that came along named Amazon. And they revolutionized the way you could order things from, it wasn't online back then, it was a catalog, but you would put in an order, you call a number and things would come. Amazon really revolutionized that, right? Their differentiator was speed. Their differentiator was access to quality products, a broad range. Their differentiator was that they had really great follow through. If you said, hey, my Amazon didn't come, they didn't get into this back and forth. They just sent another one and said, if the other one comes, send it back to us. Those are differentiators, right? And so that is what you can use to create what we call a compelling story. So compliant, compelling. Why are you better than all the other guys and gals who are coming to the knife fight? I always say I bring a bazooka to a knife fight. Why are you better? What differentiates you? And what I will tell you is, as a small business, and I've worked with many who have gone up against the largest and have won. I just had, one last year was so outstanding. They had hired a bunch of consultants and they could never get their first prime. They were a sub and they were doing really well and they were doing work within the Intel space, but they couldn't get that first prime. And I'm like, okay, when I'm reading your old proposals, thank you so much for sharing, but they did not answer the mail. This is why the government just—
I see why.
Yeah. Right. It's like, and so I would just say, hey, let's take it back to the studs and talk about why you even matter in this space. So once I just hear people talking, I'm like, whoa, you do this, you do that. A lot of these largest can't do that because you're a small firm. You're nimble. You're able to pivot the dinghy, the small boat, as opposed to trying to pivot the love boat, right, with these large firms. You have your ear to the ground. When you are with these large firms, by the time something works its way up through the thread and it's the next hot thing, it's gone through like 85 levels of bureaucracy. You are someone who is out there with your ear to the ground every day because you're a small business. If you don't know what's going on, you understand you don't eat. It's just like real simple. And so you are nimble, you're able to adapt, you're able to stay cutting edge with learning things. I tell small businesses all the time, when you hear there are free seminars like with Amazon or there's a free seminar with Cisco, go and learn whatever it is that they're offering so that you can offer that if that's within your wheelhouse. And so you're able to stay at the tip of the spear and be innovative and fresh. So I always tell small businesses, keep in mindset of being like a fresh startup with how they come in and innovate. You're able to, even though it doesn't seem like it when you're going up against the big, can I tell you, I've worked at most of them. Innovation is something that they talk about because they have the money, they have the resources to invest in innovation. But by the time they get that idea all the way up through the chain to like a director or a VP level, and then it gets baked into a proposal when someone said, hey, what are you guys doing over there? And the two entities within the large organization talk to each other. It's like 85 years later. Whereas you as a small business, you are literally a David and a Goliath situation. Your slingshot is innovation. Your slingshot innovation. Your slingshot innovation. We just were able to take this.
Say it again because they may not have heard. Right.
Your slingshot is innovation.
Being agile, being able to quickly implement those
pivot,
things.
get involved, get engaged, see what's what. And so let me just tell you, so let's say your customer says, we want, red cars with 4 wheels. No problem. That's pretty standard. Everybody can do that. But then what you could say is, instead of just a red car with 4 wheels, I'm able to provide a red car with 4 wheels that actually has a faster speed that requires less gas. So your costs go down. You are able to deliver faster and more efficiently, right? Mm-hmm. So those are kind of the things that you can use. And I'll give you some themes now. I'm happy to spill all my tea. Efficiency. If you guys get a chance, write these down. Efficiency, speed, but accuracy. Cost effective. Don't say low cost, because we're not going to bargain our way out and seem like we're the cheap version. Because cheap sometimes in people's mind, sort of connotes low quality, but you're going to say you're cost effective. That you have access to staff, put this down. You have access to the staff and their resources to fulfill the needs, because it's a risk situation when you're dealing with these opportunities. The reason a lot of times small firms lose to large firms is because they invite a level of risk that the government says, hey, if something happens, there's only 8 guys at this company and they haven't told me how they will handle risk, mitigate it and overcome it so that they don't mess up this project. Whereas if something happens and someone picks up the phone and they're screaming at Booz or Northrop, they can say, we'll get someone right over. They have the resources in the bench that's really deep. Mm-hmm. But what I'll tell you is, don't think just because you're small and you've gone against these larges and you may not have won, that it has anything to do with you being small. A lot of times it's the risk prospect that you invite into the opportunity. And it also is your ability to staff. So I talked about being compliant. I talked about being compelling. And lastly, what I will say is be concise. The government will give you page limits, but that does not mean you have to run it up to the last page, right? I've seen a lot of shenanigans, foolery, and hijinks, as I call it, right? When you send something out to someone, you're like, hey, I need you to write your section on program management. And then they expand the margins, make the font small just to get their story out. I'm like, the government gave you 15 pages. You literally, when you make this the size, font, and the page width that it should be, you have 26. So I need you to get the story tight. And what I will say is, you need to always be writing your story like you have a 30-second elevator speech and say what matters to them. They've given us the requirements. Ask why it matters to them. If they say they want the ability for you to have people on site, and if someone leaves to backstaff it within 2 weeks, there's a reason why, because they probably have had vacancies open, which means the mission is threatened, which means that work is not getting done. And that means overall people are not going to be in a happy space at the government. So compliant, compelling, give them something that jazzes them up, right? The Amazon versus the JCPenney's catalog, and concise, keep it brief. And I always say, keep it short, sweetheart. Right? I don't like to call people names. I just say, keep it short, sweetheart. Yeah.
Right. No, you've said a lot of things. The net risk mitigation is a big thing. And, small businesses need to understand that they need to have quality some sort of quality management system in place. If you have a quality management system in place, if you have processes, then it's easy to tell the government exactly how you're going to do it, how you're going to mitigate those risks. And so, and I'm telling you guys, Trinette her undergraduate degree is in technical writing. So when she said that she's been doing this, when she's been trained at every level, and then, to add the law degree on top of that, which is able to kind of break things down into, just as the lawyer, you are trained to comprehend, text in a different way. So these are some good tips. Look, I'm writing myself, because I feel like, iron sharpens iron, and you made me think about, proof points, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so when I'm writing my proposal and I'm trying to tell the government exactly how I'm going to do anything, I need to try to quantify it. We use these inflated statements saying that we're best in class this, or we're renowned for doing this, and then we can't really substantiate it. We can't back it up.
And we talk about that.
The government's like, okay, how?
How does this matter?
Yeah.
You hit it on the head, Dr. Olin. I tell people all the time, when you're inserting a proof point, I say, why does this matter? And what is the quantitative metric that would validate this proof point? I love proof points in a document because it gives the reader, remember, these are, folks in the government. You're like the 8,000th proposal they've looked at this week, right? They're tired. It's a lot. So you have to give them something that visually appeals to them. Invest the time to get a good graphic designer. Invest the time to have colors that pop. I love a good blue, like, sort of like that IBM blue or that old, Verizon blue. I love blue. And I love that in a proposal. But then maybe putting a punch of that lime green that you have in your GrowthLabs thing, in your proof points, just like a shadow box around a blue box that has white writing. And in your proof point, to your point, when you say we're best in class, it's like that's a whole ball of wax to untangle. But if you say for each of the last 7 years, out of 18 contractors on site, our contracting firm has been awarded, a 98% approval rating by the government, or our CPARs, if you're not able to have that at this time, but we have ratings that then let them know, okay, the government has vouched for you because they're giving you a 98% rating. Or we have, everybody says 99.999% uptime, but what does that mean? That means our mission was accomplished. We didn't have a degradation in service or delivery, which meant that we were able to support the DoD in this way, or we were able to keep, the help desk rolling, or, nurses working here and there, or what have you. So always act like you're explaining something to your grandmother who's going to say, well, why, baby? Why does that even matter? Well, you have to tell them that last little bit of the story. Like, what was the thing that used to come on? And that's the rest of the story, right? I think it was Art Linklater. Tell them that last little bit as to why it matters. Because if you just say, we hit all of our targets, the government's like, nah, so does everybody. So why does it matter?
Prove it, yeah. And for small businesses that are just starting out, you can definitely rely on professional experience, things that your staff has done, like, some of their highlights that you can kind of expressing your proposal. And you also mentioned that being able to recruit and retain. I think that's another misconception that small businesses have, that they're just going to go out there and they're going to bid on these proposals. But it's like, okay, if the government is asking for a certain staffing level, how are you going to staff it? And sometimes, they may understand how to staff it because they may have done this work before as a PM, but it's like, if the government doesn't pay you on time, can you pay your people so that way they don't leave? Because, people will leave for $1. I always say that they will, bounce from one contract to the other for $1, right? I mean, it's true. Or for a better commute. And so it's like, you have to be able to retain your people. So you want to get good, credentialed, qualified people that the government is going to take, because they're not going to train you people. It's not a personal services contract. They're not going to look at them and kind of, or monitor their work to that degree. So they're expecting you to come in with a trained staff. And I think the reliance on contractor personnel is growing. And I don't think that we see it going anywhere, especially since this environment, right? People are working remotely. Now agencies can get talent from everywhere. And so now, I mean, being able to really bring those folks in is going to be essential. So, what are some of those other, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say the staffing is critical. And I will tell you that what you need to do, all of you, is keep a database of people who are in your labor categories, the kind of work that you want to pursue. And one of the things that I always advise my clients is you need to have a database that has multiple people in it. So let's say you have, a help desk level 1 engineer, right? And you're going for that opportunity. Always be actively scouring, these job boards, LinkedIn, what have you, to reach out to people. Keep your list of people fresh and say, hey, we're not looking at anything right now, but are we able to put you, keep your information, your resume on file for as we bid on opportunities. We think you have a great, resume. We'd love to engage you, et cetera. And then you build a database, what I call ready reserve. So that when you start bidding on stuff, you have a group of people you can go to. You're not starting cold. What happens often as small businesses, and large too, let me just be clear, because they go into it as well, you'll say, hey, we want to bid on this work. We need to find someone. But if you have a warm database of folks that you reach out to, even if you just send them an email once a month to say, hey, here's what's new at ABC Corp, and this is what we're doing. It keeps you top of mind for people. So they know that you're just not looking for people to to put a warm body in a seat, that you're looking to establish a relationship. One of the people, that you and I both have learned from, Admiral Tony Watson always says, he has this TALK acronym, right? And TALK means that people do business with people they trust, people they have access to, people they like, and people they know. That's from Admiral Watson. I cannot claim any of that. But I've used that in my own business. And what I would tell you is that also applies to your proposals. And that applies to people you're looking to recruit. Like, don't just come to them when you want something. Just build a very basic constant contact or what have you database where you're sending them something once a month. Like, hey, here's what's going on. Or have you seen the latest in wellness or what have you? So that the other thing too is to always make sure that you are what we call a responsible bidder. So that's kind of like a government term, right? A responsible bidder. Are you able to handle the work? Are you able to do the requirements? But also, one thing Dr. Olin just pointed to is, are you fiscally responsible? So what I would tell you is, you have a lot of infrastructure things you need to do as a business to look responsible to the government. Just think about it like if you had kids, or maybe you have a pet and you're like, hey, I need someone to watch my kids. If someone comes to the door and they look crazy and they are not qualified, they don't have references, which would be past performances, right? They look super sketch, right? They come in and they're drinking a bottle of wine and at the front door. You're not going to turn your baby over to that person, right? Or your dog, like, hey, watch my kid for 3 days. The government feels the same way. These projects, and I want you guys to think about this, are their babies. They don't want to be the contracting officer or the program manager that lets this opportunity go through and awards it to you, and then you mess it all up because you couldn't pay your people. So one of the things, and I know Dr. Olin talks a lot about infrastructure, is make sure you are in contact with the SBA and different banks so that you have a line of credit and money in case the government is slow to pay. Now, in the National Defense Authorization Act, they have, really updated it so that government contractors are getting paid more rapidly, from the government, which is great. The goal is to, once the government pays like a prime, if you're a subcontractor, it's to get you paid within 2 weeks of that, right? So they're trying to pay the primes quicker, right? And then they're trying to pay the subs more quickly as well. So that's great. But you don't want to be the business, and I've seen this, where you're trying to like cobble it together and just hope and pray with, glue, and that it happens, because that person will leave for $1. If people think your coins are suspicious, they will leave, because at the end of the day, these people who work for you still have mortgages and rent, car notes and braces to pay for. These are real people. And I want you guys to understand that if you don't have your infrastructure put together, it's hard to reply to a proposal, a solicitation. It's hard to have the government or other people trust you. And it's hard to keep the loyalty and faith of your employees, whether it's one employee or 20 or 100. So these are some of the nickel and dime things that all create this composite picture for the government, for you to be a responsible bidder, but also your ability to just stand in this space, which is hyper competitive, and also be an employer that people want to work with and work for. Be a teaming partner and an employer. So.
Yeah. So you just mentioned teaming partners, right? And you talk about the warm database of qualified candidates, but I also like to say you need to have a good, or that warm database too, of strategic partners, because the way that the government is buying, it's hard for a small business to kind of just, come out, and I jokingly say all the time, people quit their job on Fridays, they start a business on Monday, they want to, work for the government on Tuesday. And so you haven't had one customer, but you want a $5 million contract. And so being able to demonstrate to that agency that you can handle that. And a lot of agencies, depending on the buying culture within that agency, they will ask you to prove your financial capacity, show them how you're going to on-ramp. I've seen banks ask for, I'm sorry, agencies ask for them to demonstrate that they have a line of credit. What do the financials, actually look like before they award
Yes.
something? And so these are things that small businesses need to be ready for. But back to that thing about partners, like, it's difficult as a small business to be everything to everybody. So you definitely need to have a good bench of strategic partners as well. But it's difficult too if you're waiting for a proposal or I'm sorry, a requirement to drop, and then now
Right.
you're out searching for partners. And so now you've wasted 2 weeks of a 30-day suspense time trying to find a partner, and then somebody finally says yes, and now you only have 2 weeks to turn a proposal around. And so you definitely need to be working and being proactive to build those relationships early. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree 1,000% with what you said, and you eat up bandwidth, and then also you can also hurt your reputation in the industry as well as with government. If you are always scrambling to find someone and you don't have that warm bench, like Dr. Olin was saying, you look unorganized, right? A lot of as small businesses that I've worked with, a lot of it is perception. Like, are you prepared? Are you playing Pop Warner football, or are you ready for the Super Bowl? Right.
Mhm.
And, or, a playoff game somewhere in between. And if you always are on like a Pop Warner sort of mindset and sort of this struggle, people don't want to attach themselves
It's more
to
like
you.
tag. It's more like, tag on
Right.
the schoolyard. Like you just, whoever show up. And that's
Right.
how it is sometimes. And it's just like, in trying to get small businesses to change their mentality when it comes to supporting the government. Like this is real,
Right.
real prime time. And so they
So,
have to really work to capture opportunities. But a lot of small businesses don't see the value in doing that work beforehand. They don't see the value in positioning. They don't see the value in capturing, or even, at the minimum, responding to RFIs.
right. And one of the things that I want to do is give you guys encouragement, because I know it seems like we're tough, but I feel like a lot of times people will just sort of give this like pie in the sky thing with small businesses. And this is a very competitive landscape. There are people, small and large, who are hiring people like Dr. Olin or myself or other people to help them navigate these very treacherous waters. But what I am here to tell you is to give you some good news and some hope that if you just kind of take a step back from everything and say, okay, what is it that I do well, and where do I think I can be a benefit to the government? Make that the first thing you do, right? Secondly, what can you do? Look at what you need to compete on this work, and ask yourself if you know the government customer. And if you do, great. But if you don't, but you have some other skills, then look to team with people who do. And when I say teaming with people, you can build that database by going to online industry days, which they're still having. You can
Mhm.
reach out and look at different, like, chambers of commerce and things like that, and join groups that are affiliated with what you're affiliated with, interested in, and reach out to people. When you meet someone at a conference, follow up with them. That's how, we have become, engaged. It's, we were on a meeting, and, it was like, hey, we kept saying we need to reach out to each other, and we connected, and here we are. And so so what you do is you build a cadre of people that you then develop and have relationships with, even if it's just, again, that once a month email, hey, just checking in on you, everything, this is what we're bidding on, this is what we're doing. It creates a relationship where people feel confident that you are someone who's for real. You're doing the real business development, you're doing the real capture, and you're engaging. This business is about relationships, guys.
Yeah.
It really is
Be
about relationships.
being someone's plus one, right? Having someone bring
Yes.
you to the dance, because it's difficult if you're trying to go at it alone. But if you have somebody that's going to walk you through the door, then that's where
Yes.
you kind of need to be. But they're not going to do that after one email. They're not going to do it
Right.
after one phone call.
Right.
You have to prove yourself, and like you said, like you have to your reputation. Um,
Yes.
when you kind of knit yourself, and you said it also, what's the one thing that you do well? You can't be everything to everybody, and when they know, that this is your lane, they know exactly where to put you. So they
Right.
are looking for opportunities a lot of times with you in mind, because you fill the gap. And then I think, when you are looking to partner with people, you need to do your research who
Yes.
your potential partners are, and then look at or discover how you can bring value to that relationship. What lane are you filling? Not slay your lane.
Right.
Whatever you do it well. If it's only two or three things, and I think we think sometimes we need to have a million
Right.
capabilities,
Right.
but you really don't, especially if you're
You
just
know,
starting out. If you are a party of one, and maybe two FTEs on site, then you don't really have to do a lot. And it's, responsible scaling, do it
right.
slowly, grow over time. And you don't have to come out, saying that you do all these things, because you really don't have access to the people that's doing these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I call that organic growth, right?
Hmm.
Work where you're planted, work where your seed is first planted, and grow organically from there. And also, I'm all about mindset, and I'm like, you also have to have the mindset of, yes, I want to grow, but let me be thankful and show a spirit of gratitude with what I'm able to do now. Because
Hmm.
I really believe when you have that spirit of gratitude and understanding, this is my lane for now. Yes, I want to get there eventually, but here's where I'm at, and this is what I can do to improve and have depth at this role instead of just, a lot of different things. I really believe that you attract that excellence to you. You attract opportunities into your field, literally into your energy field. And if you're out trying to do 84 things halfway, that becomes your reputation. And the government does
Hmm.
watch. If you're that guy who says, if they say, hey, can you make sweet potato pies? Yeah, we can do that. Okay. Can you build a server room? Yeah, we can do that. Oh, can you do plumbing? Yeah, we can do that. Then what happens is you impact negatively your credibility. So
Yeah.
I would say take a step back. You can even ask someone who's close to you, what do you think my business does? Like, what's your impression of my business and what we do? Because you will have people who know you do some kind of government stuff, but they don't know. You'll be surprised at the questions that you ask and the questions and the answers that you get back. You may think you're hitting it hard, providing hardcore enterprise architecture support, and people may say, "Oh, I thought you did like, you fix laptops for the government." And so, if that's their
Mm.
impression of you, and they know you and they love you and they're friends with you or family members, that's probably the government's impression and teaming partners' impression of you. So, what I
Wow.
would say is just take a step back and say, what do you think I do? Or go to my website and tell me what you think I do. Like, what impression do I give you? Because the government does go to the website, they look at all of that. And then
Hmm.
if what they tell you does not align to your values or doesn't align to your mission, then there's a bit of time to retool. And
You
so,
said something,
mhm,
I'm sorry. You said something
mhm,
about being grateful, or the mindset, and being, or having a spirit of gratitude. And that's something that I never really thought about. But
mhm,
I love the way that you put it. And not that I don't think about being grateful, right?
of
But
course.
just in terms of, because a lot of small businesses get so disappointed, or
Yep.
it's a shock to their system when you tell them to scale back their approach. And
Yeah.
we all want to be doing things. We all want to be, it's big things, right?
Right.
We're government contractors. And I think when the reality doesn't align with the vision that we've had, people get very jaded. They feel,
Yeah.
they're frustrated, and they're trying to do a whole bunch of things, but then you're just kind of like rowing in a circle. And they get frustrated. People leave and exit the marketplace like
Right.
religiously. And you hear stories all the time. I was here, and then I left, and now I'm back, trying to
Right.
give it another go. But you have to be, I think, consistent. And you just have to really just identify who you are, what you do, and why the government should choose you. And I like that you say, ask someone, what is it that you think I do? Because if it's not clear to them, if, the
Right.
value, the value, your value isn't clear to them and what you do, then the government's going to struggle to kind of see that as well.
Absolutely. And I am a big proponent of, again, the mindset. It is can be very frustrating. you go to these events, you're trying to get work, and you just feel like, the same people keep winning, right? That's what I hear a lot. And what I will tell people is if you've ever started, like a diet or something, right? You can't start it for 3 days, stop it for a month, start it for 3 days and think you're going to get consistent results. You have to find whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you give an hour a day or so, or a couple of hours a day, or you farm it out to someone to do business development for you. Have them looking at opportunities. Make sure that you're leveraging relationships where you're already planted to see if you can expand the scope of work where you're already working. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a government contract and you're doing a lot of civilian, or commercial work, you can ask them for references so you can start to build this sort of commercial-based past performance. It's not going to have the same weight as a government-based, but you're building a past performance library that gives you credibility, that you don't have to run out to someone and say, can you give me a reference, when you're trying to submit. Start building that library up. But what I would also tell you is to figure out every day what it is you're going to do to feed your soul. Because government contracting is difficult work, but so is pretty much everything else, right? It was difficult to learn to walk, but you didn't just crawl a little bit and just lay there until you were 50 and just hope you could, you kept trying, right? Why? Because babies do not understand no. How many times you have to tell a child, don't do that, don't do that. They just keep doing it because they have a will and they're not going to be deterred by a no. If it means pulling up on the edge of a couch so they can learn to walk and stabilize themselves, they're going to do it. Mm-hmm. So what I always tell people is what you think about, you speak about. What you speak about, you bring about. So speak excellence in life over your business. Speak the expectation that you will win. It may not be immediate, but it will happen when you do the work and you make the connections. There's a saying, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And I will tell you that when you have an opportunity to network with someone and to follow up with them, do it. If you come back from, everything's virtual now, but if you, are in a conference and you meet someone and you have a stack of business cards you don't follow up on within 24 hours, you got to do that. It's the small things where you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do today for my business development stuff. And this is how I'm going to advance because these are the income producing activities that will help me move my business forward. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Definitely follow up. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I think people lose out on a lot of opportunities just because they don't follow up. So, so do you think that there are any real disparities that are impacting minority-owned businesses as it relates to government contracting? And if so, what do you think they are?
I do. There's a lot. Part of that is access to capital, right? When you don't have access to capital, which there's a lot of places that are offering it now, it's hard for you to get the money in to invest in business development or in someone to do a proper proposal for you, or for you to have someone while you're out beating the streets and working, eye to eye with the government and trying to look for work, that they can handle the admin tasks for you, right? As business owners, and I'm a small business owner as well, as business owners, sometimes we want to do it all. So first, I would say it's the access to capital. Now, there's some different organizations like LISC.org, LIS as in Sam, C as in Charlie.org, that is specifically focused on giving minority businesses grants that they can help to stay afloat, right? They're the ones when you hear, hey, Bank of America has a program where they're giving money to small businesses, or like Lowe's had a program where they're running it through that organization LISC. And that organization LISC has Mr. Maurice Jones as its CEO. What they do is then set up the programs to run them, right? So Bank of America might give, $10 million for this. LISC will then be the one that executes getting it out to communities because they have their ear to the ground on a more grassroots level. I would also say, talk to your bank. And when people say that, sometimes I'll be like, really? Okay, because is that really realistic? You need to go to what I would say is a community development bank, because they're what you're going to find more in our communities. And there's some people that I can make sure to refer you to that are different Black-owned banks, or their leadership, Black leadership in these banks that are specifically making sure that Black-owned businesses get their shot. Because we a lot of times come from these underfunded communities, and we might not have, someone with, $50,000 laying around to fund us. So that's the one thing. Secondly, I would say, in addition to finances, is getting super organized. And this is across all businesses. But sometimes we think, well, my cousin, she does this and my brother does that. And we just try to, because we don't have the funds, we want to leverage people, right? But what I would say is that could work, right? But you have to be very clear about how you're engaging family members and friends to do work for you. And let them know, like, when we have a deadline, you need to meet the deadline. I don't want, like, you would not do this at your full-time job. Don't do this with this business. So you have to be, like my grandmother always says, about business. You got to be about business.
You got to be about business.
Right. And sometimes you don't know what that really looks like. But what I would tell you is there's a lot of forums. Like, we just started in the National Bar Association, we just started the government procurement law section. A lady named Kendra Perkins Norwood, who's an attorney, outstanding attorney, big in government contracts, et cetera, got that going, right? And so we all kind of helped charter that last year, but she, let me be clear, did the groundwork for it. And even amongst ourselves as Black government con attorneys, like, we scraped and scraped and scraped. There's like 23 of us across the country. You know, there's not a lot of us, but we still had the same kind of issue when we're dealing with small firms, that we need us to be better at getting organized. And what that means is seeking out resources to help you. You know?
Yes. And I'll say too, investing back in your business. I think one of the biggest things or biggest mistakes or one of the common pitfalls that small businesses tend to fall into is, and I like to call us first generation business owners, because we're learning as we go. A lot of times we don't have family members that are in business. And if they are in business, it's a lot of the resources and other things aren't really shared, I would say, amongst because everybody, it's a popular thing, do things in secret, right? But then when you find out, and then you're failing publicly, right? And so it's just like, but you need to definitely make sure that you are investing those resources back into your business. You know, the cars sometimes get bigger, the houses get bigger, and then the resources are not there. And I always say, if you're operating at capacity, you can't pivot, you can't make the necessary changes that you need to within your business. So if I do need an admin person, if I do need someone to handle things while I'm out there shaking hands and kissing babies, right? I can't have that, because I can't afford to now in my business, because everything is tapped. I'm drawing, as a CEO, drawing everything out that's coming in. And so we definitely need to understand not just getting organized, but, there are some sacrifices that come with building your business. We don't have to, sometimes I think, we're trying to prove to people that we are doing well in our business. So we have all these material things that are symbols of wealth and symbols of prosperity, but it's like, you can't afford to do what you need to do in your business. You can't bring in the expertise. And that's really what the government is looking for. The government is paying for subject matter expertise. And they're not all the time, they're not paying for your cousin. And the thing about it is, you could try to bring in family, and family doesn't have the vision that you have. And sometimes they don't have, some people just don't have the skill set, and some people don't have the ambition. Some people just don't want to do anything. So, while it would be great to pull and tap into those resources, because you see family, you're like, okay, well, let me help them out. This will be great for them. But, you can't always do that. Sometimes you have to pay, to bring in those expertise. And so you definitely need to, be able to invest back in your business.
Absolutely. It froze for a minute. I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Dr. Olin? Absolutely. And so what I will say is that we have to have the mindset to make the investment. To be competitive, like you said, it's like showing up to a football game without your pads on. That's why I say you need to have your finances in order, because there are firms who are not minority-owned firms that will say, we're small, but we're going to make the investment for someone like a Dr. Olin or what have you. And that gives them the leverage that they need to be successful. And so if you're always trying to fight to survive and cobble it together, that leaves you in fight or flight mode and not thrive mode. And there's a difference. And that is the big thing too, that we want to reach for, even if it's like, hey, I might have $100,000 credit line, but I have 10,000. What can I do with that? And is that going to get me the dividends I need so that I can go out and be great and get the money from contracts that I need to be successful? So I just really encourage people to not just think about, hey, what do I need to try to win this contract? And then think you're going to be able to do so on a shoestring budget. Unless you come out of that agency and you know it like the back of your hand and you have buku connections and you know how everything runs, you're going to have to bring in people who have that subject matter expertise. And here's the deal. What I tell small firms is don't just allow people to come in and bill you hourly. What you do is say, okay, I will pay for a bucket of hours, right? Whatever that is, right? Maybe it's 10, 15, 20 hours, right? And you have that consultant break down to you how they're going to use that bucket of hours. And then you have them give you, as they, just like we do as attorneys, as they draw down that bucket of hours, they're telling you specifically what they've worked on and that goes took. So that's just another way, because I know the cost is an issue. It's an issue for all of us, myself included. So I have to be very watchful of, people coming in and providing services. But when you do it that way, it works for everybody. You're able to know how much your risk exposure is, and you're able to see the work getting done, and you make everything tied to a deliverable. Now, you can't have someone come in and say, next week, I want you to give me a contract at Department of Energy. But what you can do is say, I want to see that these connections are being made in XYZ. One other tip, too, is when you're looking for experts, use LinkedIn. You can look on LinkedIn for people who are retired, who are coming out of that government space, who know the space really well, and have them consult with you for a few hours to give you ideas of how to pivot. You do your groundwork and then check back in with them. So that's another way to do that. And that's why I kind of recommend having someone like you, Dr. Olin, because you have to help people steer the ship, or else it's going to be difficult for them to do that, right? They're not going to be able to just go to LinkedIn and start reaching out to people. They need to understand, okay, this person says they were a contracting officer. That's when someone, talks to you and says, are they really legit? Like, do you think they know the space? And you help them vet what is real and what is sort of very lightweight skills that aren't going to help them move the needle. So
right. And so, and this is the last question, because we're coming up on our time. But you mentioned something about going back to an agency, unless you've left an agency. So you made me think about likability, and then going back to our favorite Admiral Watson about having access to people. So you got to have access, and sometimes people just don't like you.
Right.
And so they will, really shut you down,
Right.
trying to come back in the door for various reasons. People don't like to see that you've left, because sometimes there's you've heard the perceptions about contractors within agencies and, how people tend to kind of view them. And it's not always favorable for whatever reason. So It's like, how do small businesses begin to, really, really build their reputation that, despite what you may think about me, but my company can really perform?
Yes, you really want to find your tribe. And that's, I think, the underlying undercurrent of all of this, whether it's, looking for, like I said, teaming partners, staff, or whatever, but specifically in the government, you need to find people that really do like you. And they might not be the folks that are in a decision-making position, but they have influence. It's not everyone with the huge fancy title that actually are always the ones that are making these decisions, right? So if you're at an agency, before you leave, you need to shore up your tribe. Don't convey all the stuff you want to do, but just say, who's really for me and who's not. And then also what you need to do is continue, when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn, see who has interests similar to yours. Maybe they went to the same school. Like I know one of my clients was looking to get into a government agency, and honey, there were like a gazillion FAMU, right? A bazillion FAMU. And so she found a FAMU rattler and was able to get like a thread of connection from there, right? You build your tribe, because everybody's not going to be happy to see us coming through the door. And so it's like, but guess what? That's not going to stop this show. We're going to find out who is happy. Look on LinkedIn, really look on LinkedIn, put in something that you're in. You can put in, whatever agency you're interested in. And then you can put, HBCU or something like that, and then see what comes up, and that starts the conversation. And people want to see us do well, so they'll say, "Oh, I can't do it, but let me refer you to my friend," or, "Oh my gosh, we were roommates back at Howard," or, "We were roommates at University of Maryland, and she knows so and so." That's how you have to do. You have to be aggressive, and you have to be, but not a weirdo that becomes a nuisance.
Right, right.
And I don't mean weirdo. I say weirdo a lot, but I just,
you just don't make it weird. Don't be creepy, right?
Don't be creepy, the creepy guy, right?
And I'll say too, in business, and this is like a business 101, not specific to GovCon, but having those brand promises and really doing what you say you were going to do. So as we are relying on strategic partners, or we're making connections, and people are like vouching for you,
right?
People don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to regret, attaching their name to you so you can get a foot in the door. So it's just like, really, and I think, and it could be that you're not trying to be malicious, and, but just being you, if you falsify what it is that you can do, then you can kind of taint someone else's name. And then now you've ruined it for the person that's going to come behind you. So it's like, be truthful about what you can actually do, and don't despise your small beginnings. If you can only handle 2 FTEs, that's what you can do. But too, a lot of agencies small business offices are really doing this more and more, to where they are linking primes within the agency already with small businesses. So they'll walk you through the door, but no one wants to really, if you are a competitor, if you are presenting yourself like a competitor, but you're really not, but who's going to give you a seat at the table if you're saying, well, I do just what you do. I do everything that you could do. It's like, well, why would I give you a piece of the pie? Because I do that as well.
I'll say this, and this is a great point, Dr. Olin. I remember some years ago, we were on an opportunity, and I was leading the proposal effort. And we had 43 subcontracting companies on this effort. It was, multiple billions of dollars. And so we were managing all of that. And what we found was, when we went to people were just like, basically, what can you do? Can you help me? Let me tell you how to get the attention of teaming partners at these primes, and also the government. You figure out, okay, they're the bigger version of what I want to be. You figure out a sweet spot that you do really well, and tell them how you can take that headache off their hands. So if you know that this big prime does all of this help desk stuff, but they're really tired of like the level 1, level 2 stuff, because it's kind of like just too much for them, you say, you know what, I understand that you guys are doing XYZ. Let me tell you how I can help you and be of service. Always tell them, how can I be of service to you? That will perk their ears up, as opposed to you being just another small business that's kind of shaking their hat looking for work. So you could say, look, I know that we're playing in the same space. You're a larger version of where I'm at, but let me tell you how I can be of service to you, how I can take a headache off of your hands. And when you talk to them like that, or whether it's the government, then you're coming and you have a service-minded posture, one that's helpful to them and not just asking of them. You're showing them what you can do for them. And the last thing I say, I know we have to go, but the last thing I will say is, when you make a connection with like a teaming partner, and people start talking about themselves or their lives, and they say, oh, my daughter, is big into softball. She travels all over. If you see an article, just shoot them. Hey, didn't know if you saw this article on softball. It's a way to build connection with people, right? And that you're not asking for stuff. And they're going to remember that you're not always looking to take, you're looking to bless. So
yeah, that is true. People want to do business with people they can go out to lunch with, brunch with, have a beer with.
Yes,
that's true, because these opportunities are like 5 years long.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
We have to be in relationship, and this is how the government is buying, 5 years, a base and 4 options. That's the norm, in most cases. So I have to work with you for 5 years.
Right.
No, we got to get along. And it has to be more than just about business, because people are looking for that to evolve. And that's how you get to the point, not that you're trying to make friends or anything like that, but that's how you get to the point where they're picking up that phone and they're like, hey, we're about to go after this. Are you interested?
Right. Absolutely. Can I just say one super quick thing too, that I meant to say earlier, just super quick. Small businesses, please write this down. Micro purchases with the government, as well as the simplified acquisition threshold. you can get, and some of these, programs and everything, especially under COVID, the micro purchase threshold has increased. Not at every single agency, so I don't want to just quote it there, but people buying things off of what they call the P card, you can build an entire business of someone saying, hey, I need 10,000 here, 5,000 here. Maybe I need, $34,000 of work here and there, purchased under the simplified acquisition. So write down micro purchase threshold and write down simplified acquisition threshold. And look for the agencies that you're at and what it is, and be hitting them up, because a lot of those opportunities, especially when you're buying off P card, do not have to be competed. I know whole businesses that just get order after order after order, and they're funding their business that way. So I just want to share.
No, that I'm glad you mentioned that, because just yesterday I posted something in the group, Department of Treasury. They did a great job. They have their forecast list out, and they have actually separated it by anything over 250, from 10 to 250, which is a simplified acquisition threshold, and then you have everything that's under 10,000 that they're purchasing off of the P card that's going to be renewed. So agencies are, and they're doing a better job, and I think COVID has forced them to track things more. It's kind of slowed everybody down and kind of changed the way that we are doing business. So I'm glad you made that point. But thank you so much, Trinette. Look, I didn't even get through all my questions, so that means that you got to come back at some other time. But I definitely appreciate everything that you shared with us in the group. We appreciate you. So if someone has a question, how can they reach you? How do they get in touch with you if they would like to procure your services?
Yeah, so I am at the Chandler Law Group. It's T Chandler, and Dr. Olin has this as well. But T as in Tom, Chandler, CHA, N as in Nancy, D as in dog, LER, at the Chandler Law Group, LLP.com. Or you can just email Dr. Zamora and she'll get you in touch with me.
I'll make sure that they get it, but we appreciate
you
so much. We have a lot of people in the group, from startups to people who are making 10, 15 million a year. So
I love it.
We definitely appreciate you coming in, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Go get some coffee.
Thank you. Absolutely. Stay focused, stay positive, guys, and just keep your mindset up and your energy up. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and keep that energy positive, because it will take you a long way in this business. And if you ever have a question, even I'm not one to just, you have to pay for it. But if you ever have like a quick question or you're concerned, feel free to hit me up, and I'm happy to help. I'm here to help. We all win together. All right. So thank you, Dr. Olin.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care now.